Welcome to the Peer Effect Postbag. I'm James Johnson, joined by Freddie Birley. We asked for your questions, and Freddie and I are going to tackle them together. These aren't theoretical case studies, it's the stuff that's keeping you up at 2 a.m. Let's get answering. So, welcome to the Peer Effect Postbag. I'm James Johnson.
And I'm Freddie Birley. So, this week, what have you been up to?
Well, I made the silly decision post all Christmas mince pies to get back, have like a fitness goal.
Nice.
And so I agreed to do like a half marathon in March. But that had two very sort of big things I overlooked. Mm-hmm. One of which is actually not that far away from.
It's actually really soon. I think also after you've like done January, it's suddenly like, oh wow, we're in February, and yeah.
Yeah, even sort of Claude got confused. I was putting in like training plans. Like, oh, it's fine. You've got 8 weeks. I was like, have I? Actually, it was like, oh no, sorry, I got this wrong. You have 5 weeks.
You're like, cheers, Claude. Stay sharp.
Yeah,
That's hilarious.
It's the big things it gets right. And then the other thing has been, it's so cold and wet.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, the first 2 weeks after Christmas, I literally couldn't run because it was sort of black ice everywhere. It didn't actually ever properly melt. And now each weekend it's just like, there's a lot of drizzling going on.
Are you getting the energy surge yet that people talk about after it?
Yes, but that may just be because I'm thawing out once I get into the house.
It's just absolutely buzzing, you're done. Yeah. So funny. Nice. Okay, so our first question is from Alex. This is a good one. What do I do if my investors tell me to fire a bunch of my team?
I mean, there's so much in that question.
Yeah.
I mean, where to start with that? I mean, it feels like there's my investors are telling me side of that.
Yeah.
And then there's sort of the fire a bunch of my team. So maybe I'll start with curiosity and go like, just have they said fire them, or have they said maybe have a look at them?
Yeah.
I think that's definitely something we see with sort of founders I work with. Teams can bloat. And particularly going to that scale up phase, there's a pattern of just not necessarily fixing the people problem, but just adding more people into the problem, trying to get around having the conversation.
Yeah.
And so you end up with a sort of slightly lower accountability, low effectiveness teams in that stage, which can cause companies to kind of drift off course. So maybe I'd start by saying maybe it's worth seeing if there's something in the spirit of what they are looking at and just going, actually, is my team the right team, and have they actually got a point? Someone suggested to me the other day that almost every 3 years you should redesign your org chart from zero, which is a very challenging, confronting thing to do because we have so much attachment to people. They've been with us from the beginning. Like, there's a lot of emotion in there, but just having the discipline to take a step back and go, what do I actually need for the next phase? I think it's quite helpful. So I think that side of it, that tell me to fire people, I'd maybe look at. It's a good opportunity to relook at your team. But I think there's also this idea of my investors are telling me there is some sense of founders that they are overly accountable to their investors, and sometimes they forget that it's still their company often. And the sense that I need to do what my investors tells me means they're very much in responsive mode rather than proactive and kind of deliberate mode. And they've almost deliberately or subconsciously given up control of their business to their investors. So I'd be curious around what's going on in there for them as well.
Yeah, 100%. I think that on that last point, I see those dynamics quite a lot, and it's disempowering on both sides, because for the founder, in many ways, to feel like the investors have the ultimate responsibility to tell them how to run their company, there's something wrong there, and the ultimate responsibility is on the founders, and the people around them are meant to inform and help flag and help them see things beyond what they're currently seeing. But ultimate responsibility is on them, and them being aware of what do I think is the right thing to do here. And so getting curious about why. And I see that a lot in coaching with this, not necessarily you need to fire a bunch of your team, but it could be anything that the board is telling them that they think they should do. And especially when founders disagree, but then not actually being, it can be quite confronting to be like, drill down into why. And it kind of takes bravery to do that. But I think sometimes the disconnect is also a fundamental misunderstanding of what the investors are trying to communicate or what the board is trying to communicate. And and what they're hearing.
Mm.
Do you see that too?
Yes, I mean, we know just the communication of, I mean, particularly if you're feeling defensive, how you hear something might not be what is actually said.
Yeah.
Like I always think of my own example, if someone says to me, have you done something? The unspoken words I hear in my head is, why haven't you done something? And that's very much often not what they're asking.
Yeah. And then you throw in the stakes, and their stakes are so high, and the founders are exhausted, and they're having to make really hard decisions, and the responsibility ultimately is on them, which is a huge amount of pressure. And so you add, you know, it's like when you're hyper tired and someone tells you something, you react completely differently to when you're feeling cool, calm and collected.
and also when we talk about dynamics of like feeling as the founder, you want to protect your team, and you start bringing in other dynamics like, oh, it's a family, and all sorts of things that we've talked about in other times. Like if you're feeling under pressure anyway, and then you feel that you're needing to defend your team, it puts you very much into that defensive chimp mode, I think. It's
so true. It's so true. And what do you think, this dynamic of investors telling me to do X, how do you think founders can shift that into one that's more equal?
Yeah, so something I always talk to fans about is controlling the narrative. And I think it's quite easy to give up control of the narrative and get on the back foot. So I think if you're in a good place, so we talked before just about sort of making sure you're not feeling defensive and trying to be not in chimp mode and trying to actually listen to actually what's being said. But if you are feeling on the back foot, or you are generally on the back foot, I think it's worth asking yourself, why am I on the back foot? What is it that I don't feel in control of? And how can I get in control of it? Because lots of people seeing the same information will create different narratives. And I think a big part of your job as the founder is to control that narrative internally and externally.
Yeah.
So I would just say, what is the narrative that the board have in their head? What is the narrative that you have in your head? And is there a disconnect between those two? And how can you actually bring the board along with you in terms of that your narrative is correct? Because you should have the most information, because you are in the business, it's your idea. You're getting lots of signals that they're not seeing. They're seeing your business once a month, once every 3 months, depending on board regularity. So you assume that they have a better idea than you. That I say that's a false assumption. They have more experience, but you should have a lot more data. So I just come back to, what are you seeing, and how can you communicate that in a way which resonates with them?
Yeah, that's really interesting too, because I often see the dynamic where founders are actually really happy with their progress. They're like, we're doing amazingly. We might not have hit the metrics that we set before, but the growth we're seeing and the progress we're making, we're really excited about. And then this feeling that a board can be there's a lack of celebration of those wins, and often this dynamic where the board are kind of constantly just, it's never good enough, or like we haven't done well enough. And I think that can be for founders, sometimes quite a jarring dynamic of feeling disheartened and coming back to this idea of controlling the narrative. How they also take others' narratives as information but not as truth, and then they discern, even if we have different narratives, what they perceive to be is more true and more important, and stay focused on what they see as most important.
I mean, when you're working with founders and they talk about the boards in a really positive way, do you think boards are in those cases, doing a better job of celebration and reinforcement, or do you think that's not necessarily the board's role?
I see it more on a one-on-one level. So more one-on-one relationships with members of their board. They can have moments of celebration, and especially when they've got a really strong relationship. It's a great question. I very rarely hear about celebrations in boards, and I'm seeing a lot of founders creating much leaner boards, and because especially as they grow and scale and they figure out what do we want the purpose of our board to be, and what does an effective board look like, and how can this board add value to us, not just be a feeling of like governance. I'm seeing people cutting down and trimming back, and I think it's often centered around the question of like, how can the board add the most value, and what even is the purpose of a board. And that is obviously different things to different people at different stages. All of that is true. But I see it much more one-on-one. But I think the lack of celebration of wins, sometimes people have the idea that if they celebrate wins, they're going to chill, and they won't have that like anxious hunger in them of constantly berating or nothing ever being good enough and constantly moving the goalposts. So I think that's often an internal battle for people one-on-one anyway. Individually, sorry, not one-on-one.
This idea of sort of the evolution of what a board is definitely sort of chimes with me, because I think as you mature as a founder, you start raising it. You are the key person. Some of I work with clients a lot, like it's only being founder-centric. That doesn't mean being selfish. Like, you are the most important person in your business. You need to own that. And if you're going to be deliberate around what you want, actually the board is not there to control you. The board is there to enable and magnify you and bring stuff to you. And I think that is quite a hard shift, because in some ways it's quite comforting having this idea of the board as kind of super experienced, all-knowing safety blanket, and to step away from that and go, actually no, they're just humans, they're flawed, they have things they can add, things not, but actually it's up to me to decide what I want. Like, this is my business, I am the key part of success, how can this serve me? Feels like quite an important step to take, but quite a hard one. Yeah,
100%. And I think it can come back to that. I think you often have to have a few scars before you can properly embody that, or have the confidence and the conviction and the experience to, I think about that phrase of like, to work smart, sometimes you've got to have worked hard, and to know what is smart. And I see that often with much later stage founders is they've got the experience, they've got the battle scars, and they can figure out, and they trust themselves much more than they did in the early stages, so they can actually be much more convicted in what they need.
I wonder how long it takes to get to that stage. Because some people don't. I mean, some people never really. I've seen people running businesses for 20 years, still having not got to that stage. And I've seen people start earlier and they hit it sort of year 2, year 3.
Yeah. I think there can be a correlation, but not necessarily causation. It's like maturity in people. And sometimes as you get older, you get wiser, and sometimes you don't, if you don't learn the lessons. And exactly what you're saying of, if you're learning the lessons and asking yourself the questions, like you said earlier, of what's working here, what's not working here, what do I need, what is the purpose of this, and is it serving that purpose, and what are the conversations I need to have in order to get it to serve that purpose, then you see change, because you're learning the lessons of your previous mistakes. And so for some people maybe it takes a couple of years, other people it could be on their third company. It totally depends on the human.
So it seems like, to take it right back to the original question, that actually, if your board's saying fire people, actually as the founder, so if there's a sort of a childish response and adult response, and the adult response is actually, okay, I think I hear what you're saying, we're curious to know what's going on for you
what's
here,
driving this,
what information doing. But from a place more security, and go, ultimately it's going to be my decision if I do or I don't. And actually that's okay. Like, no one can force you into doing it. If you can just take ownership of your own business, ownership of the board, and maybe have a think about what your relationship generally is like with the board, and whether that's sort of something that you need to work on more so than them.
100%.
Amazing. Well, another great episode, Freddie. For everyone listening, we'll see you next week. Any questions, drop them to us at hello@peer-effect.com, and happy scaling.